Welcome to the ultimate podcast experience with conversations about politics, religion, finances, and the meaning of life, and all the other subjects and stories that Nana told you not to bring to the kitchen table, and a whole lot more. Join our hosts, James the Red, Eule B. Bach, and Sam the slippery smooth producer as they settle the ultimate question: have y'all heard about this?
I threw up in my bed.
While you're pulling that up, we actually got a review that I read this morning. Yeah, about Eule's boxered authority over those officers.
I was watching Days of Our Lives, you moron.
Like I broke several bones. No.
James is getting sick.
It's like, yes, she's a hostage of love. But have y'all heard about this? Right.
And we're rolling.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That's
Welcome
way
to
too
the studio,
chippy. That's
Sam.
way too chippy. Hey, what's up, guys?
Sam's more chipper because, he apparently slept 30 minutes later than we did this morning.
I actually got up at 4 this morning.
Then why were you late?
I was making breakfast for my little ones. How
Okay,
dare
Sam,
you?
Wait, what?
how long does it take to slice an apple?
Yeah, that's a great question. And
My
the question
kids
too:
eat so-
what time do your kids wake up?
No, I try
What
to
in
have
the world?
breakfast. I don't want to. This is not like this is a little bit of the left hand know what the right hand's doing thing, but I like to try to let Chelsea sleep in as much as possible because Benny gets her up a lot in the night. So I make breakfast with the kids so they don't run into Chelsea's room and be like, "I'm hungry," and all that stuff.
That's exactly what your daughters sound like, by
That
the
is
way.
I'm hungry.
So, but
Yeah.
answer James' question, what time do they wake up?
They get up at 7
Oh, okay.
ish.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
normal.
7:30. They've
think
been
that's
getting up a
okay.
little bit later. Like I leave about 7:30 for work or like a little earlier, and they're not even up yet. So they kind of get up at like 7:30 ish.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And-
so like the breakfast will be like ready for them on the table.
Oh,
Yeah.
and Benny, does he wake up once a night or through the night? How's
It's
he
a
doing?
lot. Several times.
Yeah, y'all need a loud fan in your room.
So we can, I don't know how much we want to talk about this, but we kind of see it as like our older kids sleep really well. Like once they get to sleep, they have the problem is they have an issue trying to get to sleep. But once they're asleep, they pretty much sleep all night. They don't wake up a bunch in the night. They don't come sleep in our bed. So yeah, we kind of see it as like an investment where we deal with a lot of bad sleep early in their childhood, but then they tend to sleep a lot better later in their childhood. And I've noticed just through working in the mattress industry, I know a lot of people's kids, I don't know if it's y'all's kids are this way, but like they get up in the night a lot when they're older, or like come sleep in the parents' bed when they're like, even 10, 9, 8, like those kind of things. So we've noticed if we just kind of take a little bit of time in their like early life that they tend to sleep better later on. So it's a little bit of like a sacrifice early on.
Sounds like a little bit of a gamble to me.
Yeah.
You hope it works
That's
out.
true.
No, listen. We've got 2 boys, and I do not miss that young age to where they're. You just never know when you're going to wake up with a child staring at you at 2 in the morning. But and it's never. I mean, it's the craziest stuff. Like I threw up in my bed.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, it's like
I've been there.
Oh my! It's 2:00.
Why don't you throw up at 5:00?
But there's something too that kicks in as a parent where you like. I remember those times you immediately like they're in the tub. You've got stuff in the laundry.
Yeah.
Like you just kick into parent mode, but I don't miss it.
Was that you or was that Jill? Did you do that?
We shared. We shared a lot of responsibility. We kind of got on a cadence, at least with Alexander, our youngest, to where if she like would put him to bed, say at 9, because Jill has a problem that if she wakes up, it's really hard to go back to sleep. I can lay down and within 3 seconds I'm asleep.
Yeah,
and she's very jealous of that. I'm very
that way
blessed to have that ability. But she would feed Alexander probably around 9. He'd go to bed, and her thing was, I just want to be able to have a multiple hours of uninterrupted sleep. So I would wake up at like the 2 or 3 o'clock feeding and give him a bottle. And I would jump right out of bed, go do it. And the cool thing was, I'm looking back now, I'm reminiscing. I remember giving him a bottle midnight, not midnight, but 2 or 3 in the morning. And it's just so peaceful, and you're looking out the window, and the stars are shining, and I'm like, man, this is just the greatest time. I don't miss the sleep interruption, but those were good times.
No, that's good. That's a good.
I was going to ask James about that. You've got a ton of kids. And it hit me last night. I don't know if y'all have ever had this happen. And you're like, I've got 3 kids. Like, man, where that? Like 5 years ago, I didn't have. Or, well, I guess 6 years ago, I didn't have any kids. So it's just kind of crazy. In 6 years, I have 3. So, and I'm sure it was that way with you, too.
It is crazy. And we have 7. And we went to Easter at my mom and dad's on Sunday. And they've got these pictures on the wall. And so they had pictures, like really nice pictures of each of their kids and their families that they had made like 20 years ago. And so it was Tara and me. And, of course, we just had Autumn and Clay. And Autumn was a tiny baby. Clay had just turned a year old.
Oh my goodness.
And so here we are back at the same place 20 years later, and Autumn's married and has a child. Clay's about to graduate college, out and off working. He has really long hair, which is bizarre.
He looks good, though.
He looks like a man, except he has long hair. He does look good.
He looks good. He can pull it off.
And then, of course, we had 5 others after that. So it is crazy. I mean, it's the reality.
So your kid count is 7?
7, yeah. Well, unless you
they're all good kids.
I know, unless you
man.
include Elise, then it's 8 with a grandchild. So
wow.
Do you count that as? I don't think you count grandkids in your.
No, that's just your progeny.
Well,
hey, I'm reminded of a really cool story I want to share with you. I don't think I've ever told y'all this off the air. This is a true story, Sam.
Okay, just.
I know.
You might just need to tell me like this
James
is a true
set
story.
us up that one time.
Dude, that was
and
it ruined me.
We'll set you up again, but this is true. And I was reminded of it when we were talking about that feeding schedule and stuff. So when Alexander was a baby, we really would try to feed him and be in bed with our eyes closed to sleep at about 8:30. Just because it's that you never know what the night brings. No. So we had just moved. We were in Huntsville. We had just moved into this house, and I've got to call him by name. He's a wonderful man. Just think the world of him. A guy that we bought the house from is named Billy Bell, and Billy was a judge. He was a divorce court judge, and just a great guy. Well, man, I'd love to have Billy on one day to share just kind of his life testimony, and he is so openly vocal about the person that he once was and then the person that he became after joining the church. It is just a fantastic story that he's just so open to tell. Well, anyway, I get to meet Billy in the later years. Like I meet the really salt to the earth guy. So he's retired as a judge, and we moved into this house, and it has an ADT alarm system on it. And we'd never really had it. I don't think we'd ever had an alarm. And my wife says, well, are we going to keep that alarm or have it activated or whatever? And I said, yeah, I think we should. Now, Jill's a worrier. And so the least little thing that if I cast any sort of worry or doubt, it just is compounded in her mind.
Oh, man.
She said, well, why do you want to keep the alarm? Why do you want to activate it? I was like, well, you're the one that asked me. And I said, no. I said, from a practicality standpoint, it's already installed. All we have to do is turn it on through the service provider. I said, but Billy was a divorce court judge. I said, so about 50% of the people he interacted with probably dislike him greatly.
That's a good point.
And I said, I don't want to be, in this house, some estranged ex-husband come thinking Billy Bell still lives here, knocking on the door and all this stuff. So,
good point.
So we turn the alarm on. We have it activated, but we never tested. All we knew how to do was like enable it and disable it. That was the extent of our alarm tutorial. Well, we did not know this, but when an alarm goes off, it's supposed to emit a very loud siren.
Yeah.
Okay. And it had a siren in like I think they had installed it in a air return, but it didn't work. We didn't know. The siren it had no sound. It malfunctioned. So we put Alexander to bed one night at about 8:30. By 8:45, we're asleep. I'm not talking about laying in bed watching TV. I'm talking asleep. And we're sleeping upstairs. Our master was on the main level, but we were sleeping upstairs where the kids were. And, I told you I fall asleep in 3 minutes, so I'm already asleep. And I hear voices, like grown men voices, inside my house.
Oh, no.
And I just can't register in my mind what is going on other than I need to get up, so I run and I get up, man. And I kind of get out the door and look, and there at the top of our stair landing are 2 Huntsville City police officers, guns drawn, flashlights on.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm standing there in my boxers, hands up. Is they a problem officer? And they were like, "Are you the owner of this house?" And I said, "Yes." Well, then here comes Jill kind of tumbling behind me like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're like, "Ma'am, are you okay?"
Oh, no.
I'm like, she's like, "Yes. What are you doing?" And they're like, "Do y'all live here or something?" And I remember saying to these police officers, by then they've, taken their guns off of me. And I said, "Keep it down. Our boys are asleep." Whatever you do, shoot us. Just don't,
You have no idea what it's like.
Use the silencer.
Exactly. So they said, "Well, your alarm has been going off for about 30 minutes.
Gosh.
I was like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, you have an active alarm going off right now." I was like, "Well, I don't hear anything." And so because the horn or the thing had malfunctioned. And so what had happened was when it went off, it obviously signaled 911, the fire department, and ambulance, and they come out to a dark house with cars parked there, and the doors all closed, no lights on, and basically he said, "We circled your house for about 20 minutes trying to figure out what's going on and why you guys won't answer your phones," because they kept calling our phones. Instead of knocking on the front door really, really hard, which I would have gone and answered and heard, they're calling our phones and they're like, "We can't get you on your phone." I was like, "Yeah, dude, we put those phones on silent. We're going to sleep. We have a newborn."
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, I said, "Well, how did you get in the house?" He goes, "Well, your back door is unlatched."
Oh no.
And so the reason the alarm went off was because when the air conditioner would come on and off, you had to kind of move the door in the frame.
Man, that is crazy.
It was triggering that alarm as the door had opened, even though it wasn't quite all the way open. He said, "So we just walked right in."
And they probably thought it was either forced entry or something like that.
He actually told me, he said, "I'm not going to get into details." He said, "But in situations like this, typically," he said, "it doesn't end well. It's they walk in on something that nobody wants to see."
Oh my god!
In Huntsville, Alabama.
If that'd be so, that's I'm not getting an alarm system. That just seals it. But because I'd be dead. I'd be out with my Glock. I would be.
So I told him.
I did love how Eule manned up. He's like, "My boys are asleep. You shut your mouth."
In my boxers.
Be shot.
I said, and these guys ramped up. They'd been walking this perimeter for 20 minutes, getting their adrenaline all up, thinking I'm in there. It's and remember they asked Jill, "Are you okay? Was this some sort of a hostage situation?" And it's like, "Yes, she's a hostage of love." but I told the guy, I said, awesome. "Man, I feel like an idiot." I said, "If you were a bad guy, you had me. You walked right in. Yeah. I didn't know." And I said, "And I'm a concealed carry permit holder, and guess where my gun is?" He goes, "Where?" I said, "It's in my car." He goes, "Sir, had you come out of that room holding a gun," he said, "that would not have ended well for you.
You'd have been wasted."
And I told that to one of my friends in Huntsville. He said, "Yeah, but Jill would have owned Huntsville." So scared. Needless to say, we didn't sleep a whole lot more that night.
I've never heard that story.
To me.
That is insane. Well, that reminds me of a quote that I want to give you guys a little bit later. But
about being a man.
Yeah, about Eule's boxered authority over those officers in his home. But can we do some reviews? I know we got a couple reviews. You want to hit that one review?
Yeah, let me pull it up. We'll just
while you're pulling that up, we actually got a review that I read this morning, and this was actually addressed to Eule directly. So, and it was from O.J. Simpson.
Goodness. Oh
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know if I like where this
I know.
is.
I hope your alarm
So-
system's on, Eule.
So here's what we have to remember, that when we talk about, celebrities, international celebrities, people that are very famous in American culture, they're probably going to hear it. So
They're listening.
We've got to be careful. And so this
Is it too late to recant? OJ, I mean, like, man, you're cool.
Here's what he said.
He
He left us 1 star. Thanks, Eule. But OJ says, Eule, it's clear. And again, he addressed it directly to you, Eule. Eule, it is clear to me that you are not a legal expert. He said, your analysis of my trial was not accurate. Although it was kind of funny, I did not appreciate it. And then he closed by saying, here's what I want to leave you with, Eule. If your podcast ain't legit, you must quit. So I'm just saying, we got to be careful. We got to be careful.
Well, Orenthal, we're just glad you're listening.
All right. Do we get any other reviews
James
this week?
is getting so good at this. Oh, man. Yeah, so we had a review on Apple Podcasts. I think this is somebody that knows us because they said...
Hold on, Sam.
Oh, what?
We have 200 listeners. They should know us intimately by now. Like, we've told it all.
That's true. We bared it all on the podcast. So it's by I Know Where They Live. Or no, I Know Where Y'all Live.
Oh, that's the name of the
is the name of the
reviewer?
person.
I hope that's someone we know then.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm thinking. 5 stars. However, the review is titled Unmeasurably Disappointed. It says, I have fallen into a deep, deep depression. I have fallen into following the announcement that y'all are taking this week off. Oh, no.
Oh.
This will cost me a fortune in therapy bills. It feels as if I no longer have anything to live for.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
I know where y'all live.
Listen,
Let's
you have
just-
something to
yeah,
live for.
you have something to
honestly,
live for.
please. We're gonna start some regular advice on this channel, and so. But here's my advice. When you say you have nothing to live for, there was this old story that I heard about this man that was, he'd come to the end of his rope. Like he's like, there's really nothing else I can do in this world, and so he had gotten up on this big overpass and was about to jump off.
Oh, no.
And so this guy walks by and he says, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing up there?" And he goes, and the guy's like, "Leave me alone. I'm going to end it all. I'm jumping." And the guy's like, "No, you can't jump." He goes, "Think about your poor mama." And he goes, "My mom died last year. She had cancer. Now she's gone. It's just me." And the guy's like, "Oh, well, that ain't good." And he's like, "Well, what about all your friends?" And he said, "My friends, they all abandoned me. Nobody cares about me. Nobody likes me. I'm all alone, I tell you." And the guy said, "Well, I don't know. Well, come on down for Robert E. Lee." And the guy said, "Who's Robert E. Lee?" And the guy says, "Go ahead and jump, you Yankee."
Go ahead.
Oh, hey,
Oh,
so
man.
that review,
Yeah.
as you well know, was the reason this person's in such distress is because we jinxed ourselves.
I know, by saying
I
we've
noticed
gone
that.
strong every single week.
We're
You'll
so
was bragging.
committed. Like, we've not missed a week. And then Sam comes down with the avian flu from his egg eating. Gets the bird flu and just can't make it. So
And you were traveling, so that it was. Yeah, I had some allergies that turned into.
I'd rather blame
probably
it all on
a
you.
cold.
hey, because I actually have been here more than y'all.
That is true.
Because
has
one day
been
I
very
showed up on the
dedicated.
wrong day.
We weren't even supposed to meet that day.
I'm putting it all together.
It was on
Like, where are
autopilot.
you
Ever
guys?
since the incident in
I don't feel
Huntsville, he
bad
gets
about
up
that.
at weird times. He just walks around in his boxers.
With his
But-
gun, with his gun strapped to his.
But we missed that. So the interesting thing was when I saw that you had released one.
Yeah.
Our listeners may or may not know this, but we keep a little bit of bank of material kind of held back, and we don't put everything in here. And so I thought, well, maybe Sam went back in the archives and actually produced a podcast off of all our old material just as a filler. And I'm like, oh, it's announced. And then it just kind of is an announcement like, hey, we're not going to be here. And you know what that did to me? Do you remember when you were a kid and we watched TV on, and it was like you had to wait every week for something to come out?
Oh, yeah.
I left
You know.
friends' houses early for Dragon Tales. I don't know if y'all watch that.
Well, I was thinking more on the lines of Dukes of Hazzard. Friday nights, it was Dukes of Hazzard night at my house, and then Dallas came on after that. And I'll never forget as much as I love that, the gut-wrenching disappointment on occasion when the episode would be at the height of drama and it would say, to be continued.
Oh, yeah. How many broken TVs of just like,
or you get the regular scheduled program will not be aired tonight so that we can send you
the State of the Union.
Right.
Well, yeah, my dad said that he remembers the Kennedy assassination because it interrupted what was like Captain Kangaroo or whatever, and he was really mad that that's his memory of.
Well, I was home with the flu whenever the Challenger exploded, and I was watching TV, laying on the couch, just kind of like probably half in and out of a fever dream, and then all of a sudden that came on, and it was like.
So funny thing, this isn't stealing a bit because I'm telling, but one of my favorite comedians, Owen Benjamin, he's got a bit about the Challenger explosion that he's like, he had like a female teacher, and she was like, because there was another female teacher, I think, going up in the Challenger.
McAuliffe.
Yeah, and so he was saying that she just talked it up like, this is like women in science,
man.
blah, blah, blah. Like, this is, this is it. Like, another woman teacher. She was so proud. And they like rolled out the TV, like watched it. And then he said, like, when they were in the class, it blew up, and then they just didn't say anything and rolled the TV back out. And like, that was the first woman in space, or what? I don't know. It wasn't the first woman
terrible.
in space.
There's so many terrible bad
I can't
jokes.
believe how
from
much
85.
humor Sam is finding in that.
I know.
It's obvious
Just the
that Sam was
description.
not alive in 1987.
No,
I'm not laughing, but the description of like,
it's just the fact that the teacher's
would
like
you
walking
do?
back with the cart.
Yeah,
It's on that
yeah.
big
Yeah.
cart that was clankety, and you roll it out.
yeah, I'm not laughing at the Challenger explosion. It's just like, it's like the idea of like, what would you do back in the day? I mean, it's the same with a live event now. I mean, take the Super Bowl of, where were you in the Super Bowl of 2006 or whatever that was?
Was that the Janet Jackson?
I can't even remember. I don't know if it was 2006, but
There are a couple of meteorologists that I follow on Twitter, and one everybody probably knows is out of Birmingham, a guy named James Spann. And
Wait,
when you grew up in Alabama, well, when you grew up in Alabama,
y'all don't know who James Spann is? He's the best.
Hey, Alabama writers, viewers, listeners, write in. Tell these guys.
We have a few Alabama listeners.
So James Spann is a Birmingham meteorologist, and it's always like whenever the tornadoes are coming, Spann loses his sport coat and he wears suspenders, and it's serious when the coat comes off.
Here comes the suspenders.
Get in your safe place. And and after that Tuscaloosa tornado or the outbreak of tornadoes, which hit Tuscaloosa especially bad in 2011. I was actually driving to Tuscaloosa that day. That's a story for another time. But after that, they got really serious about early warning and all that. So now I follow him on Twitter. It's really funny. Jason Simpson's in Huntsville, and he's a great meteorologist too. And but they'll tweet, they'll retweet these things to where literally they'll interrupt a broadcast saying there's a tornado. Find your safe place. Like they're trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
And people will tweet into them and be like, I was watching Days of Our Lives, you moron. And their comebacks are
my gosh.
I mean, they just cut to the bone. Like they have no mercy on idiots.
You'll have no more days of your lives if you don't get in the basement.
Well, did you see that clip of that? Speaking about, we're about to have a subject of manly men and stuff like that. There was a meteorologist that realized as he was like reporting on this tornado path that it was going to go like right through his house.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he like called like his kids on the air. I mean, like
his kid was like, "Dad, I'm playing Fortnite. What are you doing, Dad?"
Just play Fortnite downstairs.
Hey, Sam, you'll not even understand this reference. You're so young. Back in the day, talk about your TV getting interrupted, and it reminded me when you said calling home. Back in the day, if you were on the AOL dial-up internet and somebody called you, it would break your internet.
Oh, I remember that. I remember like picking up the phone. Like, so we had some old technology in my house. It was kind of like the what's that principle of like the shoemakers' kids not having any
the cobbler shoes.
Yeah, my dad's in IT. We had dial-up internet until I was like 15. Like, it was crazy. So I remember one time going and picking up the phone and hearing my brother be like, "No, Sam, good, Lord." Like, it just interrupt his internet connection by picking up the phone.
And then he had the rich houses that had 2 lines.
Oh man,
so nice.
I remember listening into the
lines. Yep.
I learned a lot of things by listening into the conversations of my older brothers and their girlfriends talking. And
oh my goodness!
But I learned a lot. I mean, it was like the most boring thing because they couldn't talk.
So
to each other.
So you'd pick up the phone and kind of hear.
Listen to the other.
Well, another thing that predates you is the party line.
Oh gosh, the party.
Do you know what
I've
that
heard
was?
of that.
I've heard of the party line. Yeah.
I never experienced.
It's kind of like picking up the phone and hearing someone talk, except for it's all of your neighbors.
Dude,
like it was a party line.
Must have been the most.
I don't understand what. I mean, was that
thing?
like? This was before my time as well. But was this like, hey, at 8:00, get on the party line? Like everybody's going to be on it. Like
no, it was the idea that you're all sharing one phone line.
Yeah, but they're not all on the phone at the same time. So
Exactly.
Sometimes they would be.
Exactly.
So you could have multiple people on the phone. You just didn't know.
I think it was that.
So it wasn't
that
an
you had to
actual party.
take turns, right?
No.
No,
it's like you said. Imagine that, like in your house, you said I can pick up a phone because all the phones are wired to that line, and you can hear what you gently pick it up and listen.
Dude,
the party line was similar, except for it was multiple households.
Yeah, so you couldn't all be on the phone at the same. I mean, you could all hear each other, but it's not like you could make multiple calls at the same time.
No.
Yeah.
You pick up the party line, and everyone can hear and everyone can speak.
Oh, dude,
right then.
That would be kind of fun.
I love it.
That would be kind of cool.
We
Talk
ought to
about
do some
community
research. We should do some research.
We could bring
old
back.
recordings.
We could bring back the party.
Oh well,
I bet there are
my
some
new
recordings.
industry that I work in could help with that. We can figure out.
All right, so
I'll talk to my boss on how we can get a
quick kid story about parties. So you all know Everett, our son Everett. He's 9 years old. Well, of course, everything's a party with him. Like every day's a party, and so
he's always smiling.
I know.
Shout out to Everett, man. He is. And he says the same jokes, but they make me laugh every single time.
when he was a lot younger, we were in the car somewhere, and one of the kids was just not being bad, but just kind of being pouty or whatever. And Tara, of course, Tara will have none of that, and so she was like, "You stop having a pity party right now." And Everett's like, "A pity party? I want to go to the pity party. Where's the pity party?"
I love it, man. He's got such a literal sense of humor. I love it.
They all have their own special, unique gifts for sure. Man. All right. So speaking of Alabama, can I throw out something real quick?
Sure.
Somehow we've gotten on Alabama. We've gotten heavy on Alabama today.
Roll Tide.
Yeah. So I heard about this story down in Alabama, and I just want to see what you guys think about this. So you all have been to Walmart.
Have y'all heard about this?
Yeah. Have y'all heard about this? By the way,
thank you.
If you guys like this podcast, we're about to get into some really heavy stuff here, like funny, good stuff. Just share it. Just share it with your friends.
Yeah, share it.
Yeah, email it out. Tell people to listen to this, and then also give us some good reviews. So
turn our podcast into a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, there you go.
You just share it with two, and they share it with two.
Do you want to be a Diamond Club member? All you have to
put
do
a
is
dollar
send us to 7 people
in
today.
the envelope.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're listening to this and you like this content, and you laugh at all, you smile, and you don't send it to somebody, you're going to have a terrible day. Like this is like
you're gonna get.
This is called the Chain Letter Podcast from now on.
Get laned on.
Actually, I heard about somebody who didn't share our podcast, and
they broke a leg.
They broke a leg.
They had the police come in their house in the middle of the night while they were in their boxers. It happens.
Podcast police.
So there was a Walmart in Alabama, and this was in Sam. You'll have to help. I mean, you'll have to help me with this. Samus, Alabama. It's in Mobile County.
Spell it.
SEMMES.
Sims.
Oh, Sims. Sorry about that. You. All right. So Sims, Alabama. There's this mom. Her name is Leslie Nurse, and she was going to Walmart with her husband and like 3 kids, and she had to face the most difficult trial that any of us could face going to Walmart today. You know what it is?
What is that?
Pajamas.
The self-checkout. The self-checkout, which I think is an instrument of like the New World Order. I think it's literally, it's a globalist cabal. Satanists have gotten together in the middle of the night and said, "What can we do to inflict damage on the people?"
I want to pause you right there on the self-checkout and tell you, because this is not conspiratorial. This is happening. I saw a video the other day, and I can't remember where it was in Alabama. I don't know if the guy said, but he was driving down the interstate, nighttime, goes to get gas at a gas station. There are no employees. They had rigged this gas station as pure vendor.
What?
So like you pay at the pump. If you want if you go in and you want coffee, there was a coffee machine. If you want drinks, there were soda machines. There was no transactional thing that you could grab something, take it to the counter, somebody take your money and pay. No employees. So they had
How
done
do they
away
do cigarettes?
the vending. I mean, I don't know if they have to, if you have to put an ID in it. I mean, your ID has a barcode.
Weird.
That almost kind of feels like the old farmer stand that they put the veggies on the road and say, if you want some, just put $1 in the cup.
Well,
which is kind of
but if you think
nice.
about it, minimum wage has actually, it's kind of interesting. There is a minimum wage. I don't think you can hire anybody for it anymore.
$7.25.
I mean, it's like people are demanding so much more. You can go to
$15, isn't it?
No, it's still low.
The minimum wage, like the government minimum wage, is $7.25. But kind of and this shows that I think you don't need the government to do this because kind of the common minimum wage is about $15 an hour. So it's like we didn't need the government for that.
But my point is, and you're getting into self checkout is, why would they do that? Well, because they can eliminate personnel. They can just
it's crazy.
Not pay someone, not have any liability there, can't get robbed, and so
be safer.
I guess that's the point: is be careful when robots and automation start taking over what humans typically did. It's in a lot of places over time, and some of it's actually probably good. Some of it's not. Food manufacturing, things like that. But yeah.
Well, when I was in high school, I worked at Walmart. And now that I've, the one in Hickson.
Oh, okay.
So that's where Tara and I actually met.
Oh.
We married on aisle 7 on the right beside the
See, that would have never happened had they had self-checkout.
That's true. That's true.
That's true.
But saying that, it was a good time in my life, right? I learned a lot. I don't want to work at Walmart today. You know what I mean? I don't want to go and get my buggy full of whatever and have to check it out myself. But anyway, so this mom, Leslie Nurse, she goes to Walmart and she buys all this stuff. Now, she has trouble with the self-checkout, of course, because everybody does. And she, as she's leaving, she gets all the trouble, sorted out, and she gets her stuff checked out. And as she's leaving with her family, the safety and loss prevention manager stops her at the door and comes up to her and says, "Ma'am, you're going to have to come with us. Like, we know that you have just stolen merchandise from Walmart." So they took her back to this room, and they discovered that there were like 11 products that she had that she didn't pay for. So, and I don't know. She claims that is absolutely untrue. They say it's true. The items
if you've ever self-checked out with 2 or 3 kids in tow, you're not exactly.
I can see it being kind of crazy. And maybe they didn't. Maybe the items weren't scanned. Maybe they were. They just thought they were not. Something happened, and she had. There was trouble with the machine as she was checking out. So it's something was up. Anyway, long story short, she says, "This is absolutely crazy. I did not steal. I've never stolen anything. I've never had any kind of thing like this on my record." She says, "You have, you have destroyed my reputation. This has been humiliating, embarrassing." Anyway, she took them to court. And sued
hold
them.
on, tell them more. So they arrest her.
Yeah.
Book her.
Yeah. So they arrested her. So her husband had to take her kids home. She winds up going to the police precinct. They press charges against her. And then when it came time for her to go to court, they just didn't show up. And so she's like, Walmart didn't show up. So she's like, okay, this is weird. Like, why would they not show up? And then but the charges never got actually officially dropped. And then so she started getting these letters in the mail. And the letters were from an attorney working on behalf of Walmart saying, if you will just pay us this $200 fee, we'll drop the charges. Which is apparently a thing. And so apparently, and this all came out in court because I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but she was like, "I'm not going to pay $200 because I didn't do anything wrong." Mm-hmm. She's like, on principle, she's like, and she's like, I really wrestle with it. I was like, part of me wants to just pay the $200 and be this done and have this, over with. But then she's like, but that was wrong. Like, I did not do anything wrong. And so she hired an attorney. They went to court. And throughout, the court proceedings, what the jury found is that, yeah, she's right. She didn't do anything wrong. Walmart could not produce one shred of evidence showing that she stole anything. There were camera footage. There's cameras on those self-checkouts. Yeah. They wouldn't release it. And so, there was all kinds of stuff that didn't add up. But what came out in the court proceedings was that Walmart uses this practice where they will prosecute someone, and then they will use this attorney, this like law firm, just to go out and say, if you give us this money, we'll take it off your record. It was almost like a pay for, there's an actual like legal term for it. But they do that pretty widespread. Yeah. I mean, that's what it sounds like. And so the judge was like, this is wrong. Walmart, you're in the wrong. And they found in favor of this mother, and she won a $2.1 million payout
Good.
from Walmart.
She needs to be set up for life.
Take that, Walmart.
Yeah.
So, do you think, did you, in reading this article, did you ascertain that this was kind of a local racket, or is it bigger? Is it like, is Walmart employing this as a strategy nationwide, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think they have lawyers out of Arkansas, which is where they're headquartered.
Oh, dude, what is with Arkansas, dude? That is like a crooked place.
Well,
I had like Bill Clinton come out of there with his drug planes and all kind of stuff.
Home of Bill
allegedly,
Clinton, but
allegedly
Sam
for
Walton.
legal reasons.
I mean, I don't know. I think Arkansas as a whole still is a pretty solid, conservative state. But
yeah, Mike Huckabee's from there.
Oh, okay. I guess
it is crazy.
I guess Mike Huckabee was
how,
a good.
How neat was the wordplay though when you had Bill and Hillary and it sounded so much like hillbilly?
She's like upper crust, East Coast, the Illuminati, and he comes in. He's like, "I'm from Arkansas, and we're gonna have some fun."
Do you think he and she ever had date night and watched the movie Primary Colors together?
I don't know.
I don't even know what that movie is.
Oh my goodness, it is. It's John Travolta. And, when it came out, it was kind of like wink, wink. This is Clinton's life story. And he talked just like him. And
was it bad? Was it like,
oh, yeah.
Did it paint him in a bad light?
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys see that movie that came out about Chappaquiddick with the Kennedys, Ted Kennedy?
I've seen a lot of documentaries about that. I don't know if
that movie was a good movie, and it was blistering. It was absolutely blistering, the Kennedys, I thought. It was rough.
Is that about him like getting in that car wreck and walking away and maybe
Mary Jo Kopernik,
allegedly killing
Mary Jo Kopechne?
Yeah. And so, yeah. Anyway, I thought the story was crazy about the scanners. I hate the scanners. I hate the self-checkout. I think it's impersonal. I think it's a step in the wrong direction in humanity.
My dad got so good at the self-checkouts, he would do them in Spanish. Like, he doesn't speak Spanish. Like my dad loved the self-checkout. Like, I don't know. He was just like, it was like an art.
Hola.
It was so funny because it was an art for my dad. Like, he probably still is. He was so fast at it.
Well, I am technology leery, like just in my nature. Like the other day, we were at a big restaurant and there was a bunch of us there. And so the bills came out, and the waitress, and this lady had to separate like 8 checks. It was a big party, and so I felt for her anyway. But what she did was that there was like this QR code on the ticket, and so she was, if you just scan the QR code, you can just pay with your phone, and that way I don't have to collect all these checks. And I'm like, okay, so I did it, and then when it was over, I thought that was so easy.
Yeah,
and part of me is like, wait, I don't want that to be that easy. Like, I don't want to remove another like human interaction in our lives where we just move forward and everything's automated. And honestly, the QR code, in my opinion, is very Chinese. Like that's what the Chinese government, how they function. You know what I mean? Like you can't operate in China without your phone, without a smartphone that's connected to the grid, which is connected to the Chinese government. And you can't buy a pack of crackers at a convenience store without your QR code, like scanning it. And I thought, I don't want to move in that direction. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, even though this is convenient, it is a lot easier than having to wait for 8 different transactions at our table.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. Like, I just don't want to do it.
I don't get with the card. You had the magnetic strip, and then people would put those skimmers on card readers. So, like, I always do that at a gas station. I'd give it a little pull, make sure something doesn't pull off and it doesn't have a skimmer. But then they went to the chip that was supposed to be more secure because you couldn't just put a skimmer that just read the magnetic strip. But then we went to the tap thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, somebody could just come up to your pocket and just,
have a little,
Like, how is that more secure?
I don't think it's secure.
than the strip.
I mean, you can actually buy wallets that will block it. But there's like, that chip gives off a signal.
The chip gives off?
I mean,
is it the chip that does it?
Well, either that or you can read it. I mean, you can
it's
like,
weird,
it's like a radio. I think it's called a radio frequency ID. That's what the
RFID
means.
Yeah.
Living where we live, that doesn't bother me as much. But if you lived in like New York City and you walk to work and you've got thousands of people you're passing, that is a little unnerving to think that people walk around with those devices too.
Probably. I don't know if that exists, but I'm sure
it
does.
does. Yeah.
Somebody invented that.
They used to just pickpocket in New York, and now
scan
it's
pocket.
A little bit easier.
They're getting smarter. All right, so we talk about the ease of the self-checkouts. We talked about the ease of being able to pay with stuff on your phone. And so that kind of leads me into this quote that I wanted to see what you guys thought about. We're obviously living in pretty easy times, Would you agree with that? So, you know, and we love ease. We want things to be easy. We want things to be, you know, like, you know, not very hard. Listen to this quote, okay? This is by an author named G. Michael Humph. And he writes that hard times create strong men. And then strong men create good times. But then good times create weak men. And then weak men create hard times. And the cycle repeats itself.
I've heard this. This is so true.
Maybe. Yeah, I've read that.
So hard times create strong men.
What are your thoughts, Eule? You sound a little skeptical.
No, I mean, I think you can apply it to your own life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at in times of ease, it's easy to kind of back off. You know, you have a lot of different personality types, and some people are just so driven in type A, and you know, they seemingly never slow down. But yeah, I think you can look in life, and you're always kind of looking for a breather, you know, and so you allow yourself. I mean, to equate this a little bit to one thing that's kind of I deal with, and I've told you guys, you know, kind of cyclical weight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, holidays come, dude. I start eating like a bear, about to hibernate, and you know,
it's easy
and then,
to do.
Yeah, you literally kind of soften up on things, and you lose some of your discipline, and then once you go down that path, it's kind of easy to stay there. It's hard to get back out of that rut, and you'd be proud of me. Yesterday, the only meat I ate, Sam, was some bacon bits in a salad.
Okay,
and I don't even know if they're really bacon. They're the ones in a. You know,
oh yeah, I don't even think those are bacon. They might be
like
even
salty
vegan.
Cardboard, I think
Those might even be vegan. I don't know.
Man. So yesterday was a meatless day for me. Not really by choice, just out of inconvenience,
on accident.
Dude, I ate so much meat yesterday.
James ate all the meat that you'll.
Hey, Sam, would you join us for lunch today? We're going to Texas de Brazil.
I love Texas Roadhouse though, because I like the fact that you can just throw the peanut shells on.
You're not supposed to do that.
Are you not supposed
There's
to?
An ordinance against that. I don't know. I think it's an interesting quote and applicable.
So we've got, if you break this down, we've got strong men and you have weak men. So let's just pause on that for a second. Strong men versus weak men. Would you say in our society today as a whole, not the three of us and not the people that, by and large, you know, we operate in communities, I would say, of pretty strong men for the most part. You know, we all, you know, there's strong men here in this church. There's strong men in the you know, the people that you interact with, like, you know, at your work, Sam and Eule.
Yeah.
But as a whole in our society, are we a nation of men who are strong? Are we a nation of men who are weak, or somewhere in the middle? Like, where do you think we are on that?
I kind of measure strength in that sense of will. We just arguably just came from one of the biggest displays of government overreach in the last 3 years, and you know, there was different motivations for everything, as far as, you know, obviously there's people that wore masks because they were, you know, they didn't want to spread COVID to their parents or their grandparents, and I don't fault that. Like, that's legitimate. There's people who got the vaccine because they wanted to protect their loved ones. I think that's manly. I think that motivation's manly. But then there were people that also did those things because they feared the government. And I think that is not manly.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I don't know that people did those because they feared the government. I think they did it because they feared. They just feared. Mm-hmm. And
they feared what their neighbors were going to say.
Yeah.
They feared sickness. They feared because if you're told, hey, if you get this, you're going to die. You know, I'll use my dad for an example. Yeah. I can't tell you the number of times that my dad, and he's in his late 70s, you know, I would say moderately good health. You know, his health issues are more physical in nature, you know, arthritis and things like that. But I remember him saying, you know, if I get this, it's a death sentence. And he was so fearful. And then we would see people, and don't get me wrong, I have people that I've dearly cared for who died. And I'm going to say this, and this is the key. They died with COVID. And, you know, one of the people, and I won't name them by name for just reasons of anonymity. Sure. And if you know this person, they love anonymity. And you'll never know them because I won't say. But they had I'm just going to say they had a relative die. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to keep narrowing down so you can figure out this. But they had a relative who was in poor health for several years, who, when they contracted COVID, died in the hospital. Mm. Now, the saddest thing of that was the lack of the ability to visit that person while they were on their deathbed. Yeah. The lack of close friends and family being able to attend the funeral and all those things. Mm. But here's my friend said, I'm sure that their death certificate's going to say that they had COVID, but anything was going to take this person out. Mm. They were in poor health. Had they gotten pneumonia? Had they gotten the flu? Had they gotten the common cold? Yeah. Had they, gotten an open wound on their foot? Like, they were probably not going to survive it. And, but then, so that's a reality. Like, people died, and some people died of COVID. Not discounting that, but to your point, I think the message that ended up coming out was, we are the CDC. We're a trusted entity. You should believe us. We know what we're talking about, and this will kill you if you're over such and such age. And it was deadly, and a lot of people, succumbed to it. But I think that fear you're talking about was not like a fear of the government or the government's going to come get me or whatever, but it was like, hey, we just believed what they said, and come to find out, they were kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth on it. They kind of didn't know, but they spoke with authority as though they did.
Yeah, and the question really should have been, if you were a nation of strong men would have stood up and said, listen, CDC, I appreciate your years of study. I appreciate what you're saying, but you don't have the authority to do this. Like, you don't have the authority to make us wear masks on airplanes. You don't have the authority to say, I can't say goodbye to my loved one in a nursing home. Mm. You don't have the authority. That men should have said that and clearly didn't. So to me, that's an indication that we're not on this end of the spectrum of strong men. We have moved over more toward the weak side, which, again, I mean, if you have, weak men make times hard. So,
you bring up another point, and you've referenced this in a previous podcast, the idea of the lesser magistrate. And, one would hope that our men and women in law enforcement and those people who are supposed to enforce what you do and don't do with guns, know when to turn a blind eye to things, right, and are in some ways complicit in allowing you to disregard government mandates and things like that. There are some who are not. There are some who are very authoritative, and any good reason to exert that, unfortunately, they thrive on. But I remember when early on this hit, I look back, it's so surreal, just kind of hunkering down with your family, not really being able to see anyone in person. Even your neighbors, like, oh, that, hey, y'all stay over there, we'll stay over here. And I get it. Like, it was a contagion that we really weren't sure of how it was going to play out. But I remember they shut down we live on Signal Mountain and love to go hiking, and they shut down the trails.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, so we finally just couldn't stand it. We were like, let's just ride around, So we ride around, and I don't even think you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to shelter in place. Like, no, we're going to ride around. We're bored stiff. Yeah. What's the difference in being in our house and our car? And we get up to this one trailhead that we wanted to go down, and they had police tape on the parking lot, and a police officer was sitting there.
Wow.
And I just kind of pulled up to him, rolled my window down. I was like, so what's the deal on the trail? In fact, it was, I think the governor had announced that they were reopening some things on a certain date, because that was the day that it was going to be okay.
Yeah. Thursdays are COVID-free days.
And so I just said, I remember saying to him something to the effect of, I thought they'd already opened everything back up on the trails or something. Yeah. He goes, nope, that's going to be Thursday. And I was like, so if my family and I decide to walk down that trail, I just looked at him and I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm not going to do anything. He goes, good man. But if you park your car right there, I'm going to write you a ticket. Like, in other words, if you park in that lot that I've cordoned off, you'll get a ticket. But if you go park a mile away, walk down here, then walk down that trail, I'll just leave you alone. And so it was just this dichotomy of stupidity.
I know.
And
well, yeah, it's,
I'll say the stupidest one that came out on this, and I'll tell you, I complied with a lot of it. I complied with tons of it. But
I think we all complied with more than we wish we would have.
But I'll tell you the one that was the most asinine, like, here's government in your life telling you what to do, was, do y'all remember the governor? It was either the governor of Illinois or the mayor of Chicago, I can't remember, but basically made a statement that said, if people are boating in the open, on Lake Michigan, for example, 2 to a boat. Someone said, well, what if a family of 4 drives there together? He said, then they must take turns.
No, that was Gretchen Whitmer.
We can have 4 people in the car, but when you get out on that boat, you better just have 2 in there.
Yeah, and then you had the mayor of L.A. Was it Garcetti? I think is his name. They were kids riding dirt bikes in a dirt bike park. And no, hang on, let me make sure I get this right. So
are you talking about the skate park?
The skate park.
Yeah.
So there was a skate park, and
God.
he said, you cannot be skating out here, which, again, it's outside.
It's literally the best
And
thing
so
you
these
can
kids
do.
were like, I'm going to go ahead and start skating out there. So they drove in sand trucks and buried the skate park in sand.
But
So
there were 2 people in those sand trucks.
So then the kids got out on dirt bikes and said, well, fine, we're going to get on our dirt bikes. And then so they just basically cordoned it off and said, we'll arrest you if you get out there on dirt bikes. So this is one example, though, of just what happens when weak men just don't stand up. I think we've had 2 years that have been robbed from us for again. I don't want to make this whole thing about COVID because I think it is what it is. I mean, it's just like we've talked to.
I think it's relevant because they're ramping it back up in China. I don't think they're not going to try to ramp it back up here.
Guys,
we just
this is the 18th, 19th of April.
I think
it's coming back.
I think the U.S. citizens are done.
Yeah, I hope that's true.
I do think
we've been inoculated against their schemes.
I think. Well, and here I'll tell you what's really sad and why this is dangerous. Let's say the next thing that comes along truly is deadly.
You mean the next created virus?
No,
made
I mean
by a military in a lab to kill mass populations.
I mean,
I don't even have to say allegedly on that.
Let's hypothetically say that something hits that is truly deadly. I'm talking about like bubonic plague deadly.
Sure.
We're all going to be like, I'm not going to do anything you tell us to do at this point, and then we'll all die. Maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's what.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that they were wanting us to do wouldn't have protected you against a really deadly virus anyway. Like, I mean, a lot of the stuff, like the whole thing, like, let's take turns on the boats. Like, that's not gonna. So it's like that was my biggest thing, and the healthiest thing you could have done was hike on the trails. That was the biggest thing. That when the bars could stay, or not the bars, but like the liquor stores could stay open. But then, but then the trails were closed. We hiked some of those trails, like just full stop. Come get me, Tennessee State Police, because they're not going to give me. They were not going to give me a refund on my taxes that I'm paying for those trails. I was like, I'm going to hike these because.
Well, here's the take that I want to have on this. It is what I want to stress is that I believe firmly that as a nation, and maybe even in the world, that our men are weaker than they've maybe ever been. And I don't mean, well, first of all, physically, I think they're weaker. Right, I think we can all agree to that. Physically, we're weaker as a nation of men, but mentally, I think we're weaker. We don't work to the level that we did in previous generations. I was talking to someone this week, and I won't give the industry because it maybe give the person away, but he was saying that we can't find people to work in jobs that pay $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Good
People
Lord.
just don't want to do the work. Like it's hard work. This isn't just sitting at a desk. I mean, this is hard manual labor. Yeah. It's hard work.
Oh yeah.
It's like Mike Rowe's dirty jobs. It's that kind of thing.
Still,
but men just don't want to work. Men aren't leading their families. Men aren't getting married to the same rate. Men aren't having children. If they have children, they're not taking care of those children. And so, I don't want to turn this into a podcast of like gloom and despair, but what the heck?
I've had a theory about this for a long time, and you tell me if you agree with it, is that we are the first generation of Americans who have not really been involved in a major war.
What? We've been in war
no,
for 25 years.
No, I mean, I'm not discounting those who have fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, Middle East. I'm not discounting that, and their services appreciated.
Like not the subscription
We've not had
model
conscription since the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that's true.
And so then if you look at in other words, if you look at the percentage of men who, I'll say this. If you look at most men, they're all dying off now. But when we were kids, if you looked at somebody 70 years old, there's a really good chance they'd been in World War II.
Yeah,
That's right.
I was thinking
really
about that the other day.
I mean, like almost every man.
Everybody's grandpa did something,
right? And not not everybody. There were some, but I mean, it was like very and the women and what the women had to do at home, right. And then Vietnam to a lesser extent, but again, a large. I mean, we lost 67,000 men in Vietnam, and then probably untold numbers went and were there. So my point is with that is that when I was born in the 70s, from then on, there's never really been a conflict that I felt like, everybody's got to go. Everybody's there. Everybody's going to go fight. We've not seen war, and that's a blessing to have not seen that war to that scale. And again, I know we've had wars that have been fought not on our soil and in the Middle East and things like that.
Except in the slight reprieve that we had during the Trump years. Like we didn't actually go to war during Trump years.
I mean, we were still in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but we were de-escalating even that. So anyway,
by finishing it with the Moab bomb.
Yeah, that's right.
So either way, I think that attributes to it a little bit that we've not had not just that type of conflict, but we've not had to really I'll say this: even with being in Afghanistan, Iraq, even we've had conflicts in Africa, over the past 30 years. The typical American is unaffected by that, other than maybe at the gas pump.
That's right.
It's true.
Unless they've had a family member, there.
Yeah, so you had like my granddad's generation. He fought in World War II and came home and just worked really hard. And so I think that would fall into the strong men create good times, which is exactly what we saw. I mean, we saw this boom in the 50s and the 60s, and then we saw, that and here's what I think didn't happen though to the level it could have. Like if you look at. There have been people, and no offense to my parents or to your parents or to your parents. Are your parents baby boomers?
Yeah,
I guess they
consider. My dad was born. Sorry, Dad. He's born in 59.
Yeah. So okay. So it's been said, and not by me, but I'm saying it's just been said, widely that the baby boomer generation is what's destroyed this nation. Like their sense of entitlement, their sense of, I want what I want, the consumerism, the materialism.
Definitely brought the consumer. I mean, just even again, and my dad's not like, he's pretty wise when it comes to this stuff, but even he was just like, self-checkout, it's brilliant. There was no kind of, and I do this to a certain degree. There's no kind of, what are the implications of this? Let's analyze this.
Someone's making my life easier. Well, that's the baby boomers. Their whole life was predicated on that. Like their life was built on faster, better, easier.
I think you had them coming out of the their parents were coming out of the Great Depression, where like you scrimped and saved everything. So that ideology I think that's actually where hoarding came from. I have a theory that we're eventually maybe going to see the end of like hoarders, but like it may take a while, just because I think it came from the Great Depression and like, well, Grandma saved every little
but that's not
bottle cap.
But that's good though. Is that what you're?
Like hoarding, I don't think it's a good thing.
I mean, the people in the Great Depression used every scrap. But I'm saying,
everything. I think hoarding is kind of the trauma effects of the Great Depression.
You're saying the psychological effects of it. Saying
that was it made sense in the Great Depression, but it didn't make sense in the 1970s.
I think what Sam's saying is there's a difference between hoarding in times of few and then hoarding in times of plenty. Where it's not like.
Well, I recently read a book about the Great Depression, and it was just a collection of all kinds of different stories of people's lives. And one of the things that struck me is like just this elderly lady in a nursing home in like 1997 was writing about her childhood growing up in Missouri, during the Great Depression, and she made points like we never had trash.
Yeah,
like we didn't have garbage. Like everything that we had, we used repeatedly. Yeah, there was no disposable anything.
Yeah.
Which was just like, it was interesting to me. And talk about hard times. I mean, these are stories of 7-8-year-old boys getting up in the morning and going to find work to help their dad and their mom. Going out and, there's this one story of these boys that would wait by this railroad track because there would be coal cars on trains going through, and the coal would shake off and come loose and fall on the ground. They would go collect it and sell it to neighbors, or they would use it themselves. I mean, and work all day long, 10-hour days. Crazy. So talk about hard times making strong men. Those boys grew up to go off and fight and defeat, tyranny all across Europe. And these are the boys that did that.
The group Alabama has a song called Song of the South.
Yeah.
And it says, someone told us that Wall Street fell, but we were so poor we couldn't tell.
Right.
And, but what you're saying, though, interestingly, and it's really kind of hitting home now that you're talking about these kids getting up and working, 6, 7, 8 years old, pretty self-reliant. I even look at I had a very easy childhood, but I was also allowed to go and, go out in the woods by myself. I climbed a tree one time. I thought if my parents knew I was here, they'd kill me. And if I fell out of where I was, it would have killed me.
Right.
But I did it, and I was adventurous, but I was careful. All these things. I don't think we would be comfortable right now letting our kids go cross a 2-lane highway by themselves. Like, I'm sure they could do it. But as parents, we would just no.
I think as men, though, we have to do that. You've got to let those kids go and do that.
It's hard.
It's tough. Like, it is. My kids are little. I have under 5 and under, but it was tough for me after Justine, my oldest. It was tough watching the younger two when I knew like they were learning to crawl. And we have this coffee table that they've all learned. I'm going to keep it forever. Like they've all learned how to walk on it by raising up. And they always did the thing where they pull up and hit their head.
Yeah.
As they'd raise up. And I remember with Ella June, my middle, and Benny, my youngest, I was just like, I got to let them hit their head. They got to learn that's there. And I used to with Justine, I used to jump in there and be the hero. But I'm like, they got to learn it's there. And they're going to learn faster if they just clock their heads a couple times,
Well, one of the things I think is just learning from those mistakes, like the coffee table and stuff. I felt like you growing up, Eule, that I was able to go out and just kind of live my life without being under the thumb of my parents, which I think was a huge blessing. And I'm not saying that that they were negligent parents. They were not. They were, they were very, very good, involved parents. They were not helicopter parents like you would describe them today. They were just like, you go out and you break your arm, you're going to know what it's like to break your arm and how to not do it next time. Literally, I don't think that they verbalized that, but that was kind of like, I broke several bones growing up.
Same here. Yeah.
And it was okay. Like I learned from that kind of stuff. And, but I think a lot of times today, parents are just doing for their kids. Like I wanted to be an adult so bad when I was a kid. Like I looked to my uncles and I looked to men that lived in our neighborhood, and I learned. I was able to learn and say some of those things are not good for me. Like this guy drinks way too much, and that's not something I want to do. But I wanted to be like my granddad. I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to have a job. I wanted to do things in a responsible way. I think today we're raising kids, and they are disconnected from that. Like they are not involved in a community of men that they can look up to. They're told across the board that men are stupid. Like, start thinking about when you were growing up, some of the TV shows you watched.
Oh, gosh.
Did you not, at some point, if it hasn't dawned on you yet, when you start thinking about this, you'll start realizing this, that every father in every sitcom was an absolute idiot. The mother had to come in and save the day. The mother had to keep things straight. The dad was fun, and he was like, oh, but he was stupid.
Yeah.
And we've been told that men are worthless, that men really don't count. That and what it's led to is just a nation of weak men, which is going to lead us into very hard times.
The last strong leading man in a sitcom was I'll leave it to Beaver. Ward Cleaver. He was a good man.
He was.
But then you get into, remember, Bewitched, Darren
was
Buffoon.
a buffoon.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was me and Chelsea. There's a sitcom that me and Chelsea like to watch.
I have no idea these shows.
Have you ever heard of Grounded for Life? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
That's a really good one because the parents are on equal tiers. Like they both had a kid, I think, out of wedlock. And so like they're both kind of younger parents, and they like still long for the kind of the time that was quote unquote stolen from them, even though they're one of
this is like a great show, Sam. Let's get our kids watching this today.
All right, kids, look up. No, but anyway, like but they have to kind of mature a little bit. But it's like it's funny. They're both kind of buffoons, and it's kind of funny that way. And like the kids are like, it's good. It's a good movie. It's a good show just because it's not picking on just the dad. It's picking on both. So I don't know. Maybe that's not good. Maybe that's even more degenerate.
Well, I think one of the hard things to do is parent with intention, and it's easy to just kind of
survive.
Yeah, I mean that's it. And but parenting should have some sacrifice to it on both sides, and it's really hard. I think it's healthy for any of us to reflect on maybe some of the things that we're doing well and some that we're not. And we want our kids to be happy and content and all that. But, I think some of the things that we've enabled them to do are not healthy. I talk a lot about the on-demandism that they have. We were joking about, people have to wait for our podcast to come out. And if you're smart, you won't listen to any of them until we have about 50 of them. And you just listen on demand.
I've done that before.
But, the kids now, if they want to hear a song, turn it on. They want to watch it, find it on TV.
I remember hunting down a CD that I wanted when I was like a teenager, and I went to like Barnes and Noble and like found this deluxe, but I had to like hunt it down, and I kind of missed that.
New Kids on the Block.
It was Owl City, but that was my.
It was what?
It was Owl City.
Never heard of it.
What is that?
They're like, you would not believe your eyes.
Nope.
10,000 fireflies.
What is your birth year, Sam? I have heard this song. Yeah. I thought it was probably in some kind of rom-com that came out.
One of my favorite
90s.
bands.
Wow. I'll give it a listen. I'm very open-minded when it comes to music.
All right. So I have one final thought to close this out.
We're going to close it out, or are we going to part 2?
Well,
we've only been going for an hour and a half.
That's true. We can part 2 it.
Do you want to part 2 it?
We started out, though, with talking about COVID, right? Yeah. And then we quickly morphed into what I feel like
COVID-19.
That's where you're going with that.
Without even really saying it, we morphed into this understanding that the government highly misled the entire population, either willfully, intentionally, or just through its own malfeasance.
Yeah.
So my question is, in order to take a first step into building strong men, should we think about how the government has botched that, and then look at every other place the government has put its tentacles into? Like, for instance, our diets. We're fatter than we've ever been as a nation because the government, and again, I don't want to be overly simplistic, but the government says, eat this way, and it's wrong, right? It's completely wrong.
You had the fat-free thing, and then they just put a bunch of sugar in the fat-free product.
The government has its tentacles into work, to our culture, to what we believe in churches, to how we run our churches, we saw in 2020. And so my thing is, let's promote men being men and standing up and saying, we're not going to just blindly go along with whatever the government says, with whatever the culture says. We're going to raise our families on good Christian, solid, objective values found in God's word. And
I think that's it.
That's
staying
what we have to get back
in the
to
word. Staying rooted in the word and the wisdom that comes from the word. It's amazing. I think it's amazing. Eule highlighted it. It's fear. It was amazing that a lot of the people I grew up with in my old church, I heard about how they were terrified of this virus.
Yep.
We're people who Jesus had victory over death. Death means, even Paul said, to be absent from the body is to be present with Christ. We should be the people that fear death the least.
That's right.
But honestly, a lot of the Christians,
out there, carrying the Christian banner, marching forth into the plague, and not even being like, we're going to do what we have to do.
Literally, the Bible talks about we talked about snakes. Snakes will bite you. Nothing's going to happen. It's you're going to drink poison. Nothing's going to happen to you. And it's nobody that I saw, a lot of, there were definitely people, I feel like our church was marched forward into it, but there's very few people that were like, you know what? We're going to do what's right. If this virus kills me, I'm present with Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, we celebrated Easter a couple days ago, and 2 years ago at Easter, we were told by the mayor of Hamilton County that you cannot meet in church. We met anyway.
That it would violate his order.
But of course we met. We're like, we are gonna meet. The church is going to open. You're not going to shut this church down.
So I have two thoughts on so it's not so much gloom and despair and people come away depressed, but there's two things that
Sorry,
I'll say this. While we do have the government kind of issued the SAD diet, the standard American diet, I will say no one's ever forced me to eat anything. So my obesity is of my own free will.
Yeah.
And but I will say that it's not so much government as it is mass production of food and processed foods, because we have a thing, and I've said this 1,000 times, to tell you how blessed the United States is. The number one health epidemic of its poor is obesity.
That's right.
You don't find fat people.
It's not COVID.
You don't find fat poor people in India or China or Africa. Like the poor people are extremely slim because they're malnourished.
Or if you go look at pictures from 1985 back, you don't see it either.
Yeah.
It hit like an atom bomb in like the mid 80s.
So that's the one thing is you still have control, and we could get into pricing and how hard it is sometimes to eat fresh fruits and vegetables and all that. But the next thing I would say though is, an encouragement that I would have for people is if you are disheartened by politics and your politicians and the way things are, there are a lot of things you can do. One, you can run for office. And if you do that, I would hope that you would run to say, I want to be a statesman. I want to be someone who can actually do good. I don't have this personal agenda.
I don't want to get rich, which is the goal of politics.
I'm huge into term limits. I'll tell you,
change them like diapers.
We're running out of time. There's something I would go down and talk to you guys about, but I think it would lead into another 20 minutes. But you can also write your elected officials, have a voice, be a squeaky wheel. And, you'd be surprised sometimes that you may actually have something in common with some of these elected officials. And I think following politics for a long time, one thing that I know is that while we're very divided on party lines, if you actually talk to the politicians and their staff, they will tell you that a ton happens behind the scenes, and they actually do work together on a lot of things to try to compromise around things. So it's not as divisive as the media would lead you to believe.
And sometimes they lead you to believe.
They lead you to believe that it's total, that we're all totally pitted against each other, and you have kind of your what you may call your fringe left and your fringe right, and they get most of the airplay, but they're really not the people in the middle, kind of trying to work through solutions on things. So anyway, that's my encouragement is. If you don't like it, speak up about it. Say something to somebody.
Be a man.
Your congressman.
Step up.
And
get involved.
And if you don't like it, then put your money where your mouth is, and contribute to the next person's campaign. Try to help someone else get elected that you are more aligned with.
I like what you said, Eule, about being intentional. Like you've got to be intentional with your walk with the Lord. You've got to be intentional about raising your sons. You've got to be intentional about what you put into your family's minds, your home, who you vote for. And then and I've said this before a lot, you actually vote on election day, but you vote every single day. Everything you do is a vote. You go to Starbucks, you're voting for that company's values.
Yeah.
You go give, and again, people are like, well, I got to have a cup of coffee. I know, but it's like, fine. But there are 5 places within a 6-mile radius where you can get a cup of coffee. Does it have to be that place? You're voting for that place.
Yeah, Chattanooga's blessed with a lot of awesome coffee.
That's right. And so
there's plenty of places
just
to
be
choose
intentional.
from.
Know where your money's going. Know what your money's being used for.
Yeah.
The Have Y'all Heard About This podcast is produced by Play It By Ear Audio. Leave us a review, like us, rate us, or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. If you wish to contact us or you have a suggestion for the show, email us at hyhatpodcast@gmail.com.